Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Triple Play Fantasy Baseball Show. I am your new host, Marty Tallman, and with me is my co-host and good friend, Eric Doc Mendelson. Me, Eric, and prospect guru Vinny down on the farm Marsh will be hosting the show from here on out, and we're super excited to do so. So let's get started. On this episode, we are going to analyze Vegas and the 2025 future bets, focusing on over-unders for home runs and some stolen bases. We will also discuss how to use Vegas bets to complement your fantasy baseball research, and we will compare them to the bad X player projections. But before all that, Eric, how you doing this morning?
Marty, you remember that song? Reunited and it feels so good. It's good to be talking baseball again with you, buddy. Been missing you. Won't be the same without David and Art this season, but really excited for me and Vinny to put out a great product.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get one of them or to both of them, hop in on a show this year for sure. They're not going to get away scot-free, but yeah, me, you, Vinny for here on out. So I'm really excited about it. And looking outside here at the Detroit, Michigan weather, I got about 6 inches of snow, which means it is time to talk about some fantasy baseball. Okay, Eric, before we hop into all of it as well, tell us a little bit about your background with betting on sports, because that's going to be the primary focus, is looking at Vegas, look at the over-unders, and then how can we use that? As you and I were talking off air, how do you use Vegas numbers to help you with your fantasy baseball research?
Yeah, so, just a little bit of a background. Living in Maryland, sports betting has been legal since November of 2022. So this is the second full season or third full season really being able to use those numbers. There's discrepancies on different books for home runs, for stolen bases, for pitcher strikeouts. And I kind of use that as a guideline and comparing projections with Bad X, with ATC, with all of the ones on Fangraphs, especially in Roto and a 5x5 build. If I'm looking to get steals in later rounds, or steals meaning guys that can provide value in categories that aren't towards the top, I use these numbers as, people that could give me potential pop that aren't at the top. Someone that we'll talk about is Michael Toglia, but that could be a good source for power because the books have his home run props. So obviously they think that there is value in putting that out there. So, and I'm always a believer that Vegas knows what they're doing for the most part. So using these numbers and ranges kind of helps me build my team a little bit.
And when you talk about projections and you're looking at hitting specifically, which player projection model do you prefer?
I think the Bad X has been the most consistent over the last couple of years. I think they factor in hard hit percentage. I think they factor in age. I think they factor in ballpark. And not, somebody had a really great year last year, but kind of how their career has been as a total. And for, young guys like we're going to talk about today, Marty, I think they do a very good job of keeping projections modest.
Okay. And what about pitching? I know we're not going to really dive into pitching because pitching projections and Vegas over-unders for pitching can be a little bit more difficult. But for the listeners, if you're going to dive in, you're going to sit down and look at some player projections specifically for pitching, which one do you prefer?
I like ATC. I think especially what we saw last year with, I think it was the most Tommy John surgeries and elbow and shoulder injuries we've ever seen in a season, that you have to factor in pitchers missing a start or two, pitchers not throwing as many innings as they have before, strikeout numbers being down a little bit. And I think ATC factors that in more than some of the other ones that assume every pitcher is going to make 31, 32 starts throughout the season.
And a good thing about ATC, as everyone knows, that's Ariel Cohen's model. It's a conglomerate of the rest of the player projections. He looks at all of them. He weighs them specifically. Some projection models do hitting better, some do pitching better, and he takes all of them, combines them into one, and puts out, I would say, a safe projection. That can be used in a bunch of different ways. Okay, well, let's look at hitters. So we're going to start with Jackson Chourio, Milwaukee outfielder with a current ADP of 15. Woo-wee. End of round one. He's already up there. I think he was around 5 or 6 last year. Outstanding rookie season. And now he's right here at the top of the ADP. Bad X projection has him for 633 plate appearances with a 270 average, 20 home runs, 81 runs, 81 RBI, and 25 stolen bases. looking at Vegas, the over-under for his home runs, 21.5 on FanDuel. The over is minus 108. The under is minus 118. Well, I'm going to ask you the question. Who's right?
I mean, this is one of the ones where Vegas is good at their job, and I wouldn't personally bet this. I'm going the over. He's not coming into the season with any injuries. He's going to be 21 years old, so you could say that he's still developing. He hit 21 home runs in 148 games last year. So let's just say he plays 152, 153 games, which I think is a conservative projection. ATC has him playing 149. So all he needs is one more home run than he did last year. Struck out at a 21.1% K rate, but I'd imagine that goes down as he starts to see more major league pitching. This was his first year in the majors. The over, once again, the odds favor the under, but I think there's more reason to think that he's going to hit 22 or more. What about you?
Well, first off, I was surprised for you to go over with our first guy.
I know. I feel so dirty.
This may be the only player that you choose the over. But yeah, I mean, he's 20 years old. The XBA 274. So that means the contact rate is there. His bat speed is in the 70th percentile. Hard hit percentage in the 73rd percentile. As you look at his rolling ex-WOBA towards the end of the season, it did fall off a little bit, but I think we can contribute that to, he kind of hit a wall. I mean, first time he's ever played, that many games, in one season. When you look at his spray chart, he has power to every part of the park, right, left, even a couple in center. So I took Chourio in the beginning of the second round, overall the 18th pick in a DC this year. So I do believe in it. I like the park. I'll take the over on the 21.5. But the over might be 22 or 23. It's close.
That's what I'm saying. An over is an over.
So, but yeah, I mean, Jackson Chourio at this point, I mean, you can't go wrong. So everything looks good there.
And I just want to say, 99% of what I bet on is unders, because unders are statistically more favorable to hit. So it takes a lot for me to say that someone is hitting an over.
And actually piggybacking off that, tell me a little bit about like your history with betting. And the reason why I wanted to do this show specifically with you is you're probably the person, like the best person I know with betting on baseball, specifically with future bets. So tell me a little bit, like, what do you contribute your success to? Like, shooting the under more, or what are you looking at?
So statistically, unders are more favorable to hit. The general public likes betting overs because it's something to root for. There's about 8 books that are legal in Maryland. So before the season starts, once January, February roll around, they'll start putting these out gradually. And I like kind of having a mental note, and this is going to sound bad, but probably every day I just kind of skim the books and see what's available. Part of it is I factor injuries that might be swept under the rug from last season. One of the things I put a lot of money on last season was Joe Musgrove unders, because Musgrove dealt with injuries towards the end of the season. There was a belief that he was going to come into the season healthy, but he never had surgery to address it. So I, just from being a fantasy baseball nerd like myself, I remember these notes from last season, and then I use these projections as a guideline. So I placed a large wager on Seth Lugo under 170.5 strikeouts. Every projection system on Fangraphs had the under. And when you look at him throwing a career high in innings, going into age 36 season, could he throw more than 170 strikeouts? Absolutely. But it's more likely than not that he isn't. Also turn on underdog notifications, because we're going to start getting notifications of people who are having shoulder soreness, elbow soreness, getting MRIs. As soon as you do that, go and place the unders before the books can take the lines down.
Very smart. Very smart. Okay, now looking to Jarren Duran, Boston outfielder with an ADP of 20. So he's pretty much right behind Chourio as far as you have to take that early second round pick. Bat X projects him for 646 plate appearances with a 269 average. 20 home runs, 94 runs, 74 RBI, and 33 steals. So 20 home runs, 33 steals, getting you a plus batting average. Everything looks good there. Let's see what Vegas says. Vegas, not as optimistic. Home run over under a 17.5 on FanDuel and a 19.5 on Caesars. Are you leaning more towards the bad X or more towards Vegas?
I'm leaning towards the under on that. All of the projections have him under 21 home runs last year. He had that in 160 games. When you look at his 193 games prior in the previous 3 seasons, he had 13 home runs combined. I think he might have sold out for power a little bit more last season. I don't think Boston is going to ask him to do that. Triston Casas should be healthy for an entire season. They just signed Alex Bregman. Hopefully Rafael Devers' shoulder issues are behind him. I think they're going to put more of an emphasis on him getting on base. And he played 160 games last year. So, let's just say he goes on the IL at least once. There's no way he hits that number. I'm taking the under 19.5 on Caesars.
Now, and actually, that you brought up Rafael Devers. I didn't see if he has any over-unders yet. I don't know if the books are probably wondering the same thing about his shoulder. Are you fading him? Or are you diving in? Because he's going later than last year. He's going about early 3rd round in a 15-team league.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Books do have his stuff up. Ranges between 27.5 to 30.5 home runs. I would take him at the right spot. I think the 3rd round is good. That shoulder injury, I think, is baked into it a little bit. The lineup has gotten better, and Devers is a producer when healthy. So, I mean, Marty, this might be the best lineup he's ever had in his time in Boston, right?
I would say so. But it was in the thing though with the shoulders. It was both shoulders.
I know.
So I don't know. I don't have him anywhere yet. But if I'm sitting there mid 3rd round, late 3rd round, I don't think I'd be able to pass up on him. But now looking at Jarren Duran's stolen bases. So Bad X projects him for 33. Vegas 29.5 on FanDuel. Which way are we leaning? Taking the over or the under?
This is another tough one. I think I'm going to go the over. 34 stolen bases last year. His sprint speed is in the 96th percentile. I think he's going to be a table setter. It's weird betting on stolen bases because that's something somebody could have 3 stolen bases in a game. And I don't think the books have necessarily reflected on that with the base running rules from last year, the increased base size. I'm taking the over. What about you?
I would take the over as well. As we were talking about one of my most recent DC drafts, I went Jackson Merrill in the beginning of the 2nd round, only because Jarren Duran was taken right before me. So I got snaked on him. I would prefer to have him. I think there's I think there's less of a fall off. Like you said, he's in a great lineup. Boston has no problem with him running, and since he's been up, he's been absolutely incredible. So I would take the over. Let me look at the home runs again. I'll take over on both, actually. I think he could get
Wow.
I think he could get to 18, 19 home runs, and I think 30 stolen bases I think that's money in the bank. Honestly, I do.
Marty, let me ask you, what are your thoughts about the Red Sox heading into this year? I feel like they've had one of the more intriguing off seasons.
Yeah, I mean, this is the first time they've acted like they're a big market team in a long time. They've been kind of nipping away at the corners there, but looking at roster resource, Duran, Devers, Bregman, Casas, Yoshida. We'll see what happens with Yoshida. He's slotted in for the DH right now. Bregman at 2nd. Who knows how long that's going to last. Trevor Story at shortstop. There's no way Trevor Story's lasting 162 games. So I think they're going to have to adjust that, whether that's bring Rafaela in the shortstop, even though he is a better center fielder. I don't know what they're going to do there. Wilyer Abreu, Connor Wong, and then Rafaela finishing it all out. I mean, the AL is really weak right now, I think, just overall. So I think Boston's a top 3 team at this point.
I mean, David Hamilton was a great source of stolen bases as a utility player last year.
Yep.
We're not even talking about if Christian Campbell gets called up. And I mean,
True.
they
Roman
probably
Anthony.
got, yeah. And would you say that Garrett Crochet was the biggest pitcher acquisition this offseason?
I would say so.
I mean, I'm just thinking about him and Corbin Burns at the top of mind of players that switch teams.
Yeah, I mean, well, I guess it's 1A and 1B. Looking at Crochet's projections, I mean, they got him. Let's look at ATC. 157 innings they got him for with 11.74 K per nine, 2.58 walks per nine with the 3.21 ERA. I don't have Crochet anywhere. I see he's going in the late part of the second round. I think if he fell to the beginning of the third round, so let's say if I go hitter and he's there at the beginning of the third, I wouldn't mind picking him up. But with pitching this year, because thanks for not telling me about Joe Musgrove. Your boy drafted Joe Musgrove in 2 different leagues, and that blew up in my face quickly. So after that, how many more innings did he do before that? So 2021, he had 54 innings. 2023, because he missed 2022. 2023, he had 12 innings. And then last year, 146. So I don't know. I'm staying away from him. I'd rather have Burns, specifically at his ADP, and just overall, I think it's just safer. But if you're going for in a 10, yes, a 10-team league, I play in that, as you all know. 10 or 12-team league, I would be more willing to go with Crochet. But if we're looking at him and Burns, I would go Burns, just in general. What about you?
Oh. I'd probably go Burns, but I feel like there is, especially if I'm chasing strikeouts, Garrett Crochet, 209 last year and 146 innings. I think he throws more than that. And he was doing this with the White Sox last year.
True.
Imagine just, having a better culture there. There was talks about shutting him down at certain points because he wasn't going to sign an extension, and it was known he wasn't going to be with the White Sox long term. So, I don't know, better offense, better division, I think, for wins. Where is Burns' ADP right now?
I want to say it's actually moved a little bit, but let me see. I have it pulled up here. Let's see, Burns, where are you at? Hello. Wow. Okay, so middle third round. So with an ADP of 39.26, here's the guys going in front of Burns, which I think is ludicrous. Jacob deGrom, Chris Sale. I'm cool with Zach Wheeler and Gilbert. That's fine. But Crochet's going before even Gilbert and Wheeler. I'm looking at that wrong. Sorry. In front of Crochet, or after Crochet, but in front of Burns. Sale, deGrom, and then Burns. I'd rather have Burns than deGrom and Sale. What about you?
I would take Burns over Sale.
Whoa.
I don't know. I think Corbin Burns is literally like the safe pitcher.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's not going to give you huge spike games like he used to. The K numbers won't be there, but he's also not going to give you many games where he blows up. So I think it's about how you build your team. Are you going to be someone that's risk adverse, or are you going to be someone that likes to chase upside?
Well, I saw in the last month or so, last 6 weeks of the season, Burns, found a couple different pitches and his K rate started to go up a little bit. So there was a little more optimism leading into this year. I'm hoping tonight I have the Bubba and the Bloom auction, the first auction draft. I'm going to try to get them. I'm hoping people will pay more for Sale, pay more for deGrom, pay more for Crochet, Wheeler, and I can maybe just sneak in Burns there.
So drop this pod tomorrow is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I won't be editing this today. I'll be waiting. Okay, let's move on to Jackson Merrill, San Diego Padres outfielder, ADP at 25. So he skyrocketed up there, middle of the second round. Bad X projects him for 630 plate appearances with a 274 average, 23 home runs, 83 runs, 81 RBI, 15 stolen bases. Looking at his Vegas over-under on home runs, 22.5 on FanDuel. Where are you leaning? Do you think he gets higher than 22.5 or lower? Where are you at?
Marty, you and I were talking about him in our text chain the other day. So I want to start with you on this.
Mm-hmm. No problem. I'll go higher on the home. I think he'll hit over 22.5 home runs. I'll go over on the home runs. Now, 15 stolen bases. I think he's more of like a 10, 12 stolen base guy. Looking at his running profile and everything they'll need him to do in San Diego. And yeah, I do have one share of Merrill, and I took him right at the beginning of the second round, mostly because I just wanted to get him in there. I just wanted to not go. I don't want to leave every one of my drafts and not have him. Kind of like a FOMO situation. But what about you?
So 22.5 is the line. This is, once again, Vegas is good at what they do. I'm going to take the over on it. He hit 24 home runs in 156 games last year. I know Petco is deemed as more of a pitcher's park, but I think this is one of those guys that has upside now. Is he going to hit 30, 35 home runs? No, but I could see him hitting 24, 25, repeating like he did last year. To my knowledge, not coming into the season with any injuries. I've been down on the Padres a little bit myself, but as long as he has protection with Tatis and Machado, I think that he'll have pitches to hit. Struck out at only a 17% rate last year, a 292 average. So he's going to make plenty of contact. And I feel good about taking that line of someone that doesn't necessarily just sell out for power with his profile.
And actually that's you remind me with this contact rate. So what I did, I built this spreadsheet that looks at elite contact rates, so 80% or higher for contact, and higher than average barrel rate. So the barrel rate last year on average was 7.8. Looking at Merrill, an 81% contact rate with 11.3 barrel percentage. So he makes contact at an elite rate, and he's barreling the ball way above average. So with that 17% K rate, and his BABIP was 318. I think for him, and with a little bit more speed, I think that's normal. I mean, you'd love to see he has a walk percentage just south of 5%. So you'd like to see that a little bit higher, but because of his contact rate and his barrel percentage, I believe he's very safe even at his current ADP.
Yeah, and I mean, looking at it, he's a 6'3", 195-pound outfielder. He's 21 years old.
Only 21.
It's not crazy. It's not crazy to say that he's not done growing into his body yet.
I completely agree. I mean, I don't think anyone expected him to come out this hard, especially after he struggled, in 2020, 2023 when he came up, or at least he didn't look like this. So, yeah, I'm fully on board with him.
It's funny. This person and the person we're going to talk to next are Maryland natives, and living in here or in this state my entire life, I've heard about these guys for years and years, especially the guy we're going to talk about next, years before, most of the MLB pipeline was aware of them.
And that man is James Wood, Washington Nationals outfielder with an ADP of 51. The Bad X projects Wood for 592 plate appearances with a 257 average, 17 homers, 75 runs, 67 RBIs with 17 stolen bases. So not nearly a 2020 guy like the two previous, and with a little bit lower of a batting average. That's because of his contact rate, a 257 average. Looking at Vegas, home runs over under at 18.5 on Caesar. And then you said that books have been fluctuating on him. What somewhere between 16 to 19. Why do you think that is?
I think part of it is some books look at others for lines, and then others make theirs independently. I think when you look at James Wood, he had 9 home runs in 79 games last year. So that pace would probably put him 17, 18 maybe, especially as he started to hit for power later. There was a game where he had 2 home run game later in the season, I think in September. I would take the over on 18.5 because I do want him on the pod at some point. We go to the same barber, and I've been having empty promises that he'll be on the pod. So I don't want to seem like I am talking negatively about him. He's also 6'7".
Does his research.
yeah, he might. 6'7", 234. I've been hearing about him since he was in middle school. Someone that has just developed his game even more. He was a great contact hitter, but as he started to get older, has grown into his body more. 14 stolen bases. He walked at an 11.6% clip last year. He struck out about 29%. Yeah, 29% of the time in the majors, but that was 18.2% in the minors in AAA. So I think he's going to come back to some regression for the strikeouts, but I think he's going to play an entire season. So,
yeah, I mean, well, with his ADP and that high of a strikeout rate, I think other than like talking about Merrill and Chourio, I think those are a lot safer, even though you have to pay up for them. Anytime you see a strikeout rate near 30%, I don't know. He had a WRC plus of 120, so he obviously did a really good job coming up. Where do you think he'll end up with the strikeout rate?
I think it's going to be in the high 20s, but I think it'll be probably like 26.5%.
Okay.
What
Looking
about
at
you?
let's see, Z swing, so zone contact. So this is when the ball is actually in the zone. 53.9% of the time he gets it. His contact rate 72.6, which isn't terrible. Anything below 70% of a contact rate, that's when we start, seeing guys who just sell out for power or whatever it is. And then looking at his contact rates throughout AAA, it was 74. Double A 68.4, high A 74.4. So he's just below or just above average with his contact rate. So his XBA is 269. I don't know if he reaches that. I'm a little more pessimistic with him. I can see him getting, somewhere around 15, 16 home runs. I think the stolen bases will be there. I don't have any doubt with that, especially if he holds his walk rate. But I'm afraid of the strikeout rate and just the overall contact rate. He's going to be a guy that I'm not going to get any shares of him. I can pretty much already guarantee that. But I will be watching him closely. So we'll see. Anything else you got on him?
I know these splits aren't necessarily even, but I look at the first half where he had 53 at bats, 1 homer, 7 RBIs at 245 average. The second half, which Fangraph defines 242 at bats, 8 home runs, 34 RBIs, a 269 average. So it seems like he came out a little slow and then got more acclimated to it. I think the Nationals have an improved lineup this season. I like some of the, Dylan Cruz will hopefully be there for the entire year. I think CJ Abrams, after that incident last season, I've read he's gained about 10 to 15 pounds of muscle. I think the Nats are going to be a pesky team next season. So
for the first time in a very long time, it's a very exciting team, I think. Yeah, CJ Abrams leading off, Dylan Cruz slotted in at the 2 spot, Wood at the 3 spot, and then Nathaniel Lowe, new addition here at first base, Josh Bell at DH, and then goes on to Luis Garcia, Keibert Ruiz, Jose Tena, Jacob Young. The second half of the lineup's going to be pretty brutal. Who knows how long Bell lasts, but James Wood in the 3rd spot. I haven't done the research, but don't you think that takes away from his stolen bases at some point? Him being slotted in at the 3rd spot.
Yeah, that's why I don't think there is props for his stolen bases, because it's hard to gauge on that. I think they're going to want him to be the power guy.
Okay. All right, James Wood. Would you take him at his current ADP of 51? And just to put that into perspective, let's see, where is he going? Is that like the 4th round? Yeah, somewhere around the 4th round.
What other players are around him?
Let me see. Let's see. Look in there. So middle 4th round. Let's look at other outfielders. Not that many. So he's kind of on an island, to be honest with you. So mid 3rd round. So this is a full round in front of him is Michael Harris. And then just after him, Wyatt Langford. And then the next guy is Teoscar Hernandez, at the whole next round below him. So he's pretty much on an island. You'd have to just, if you want him, you're going to have to get him in the middle of the 4th round. And you'll be passing up on Cole Bautista, which I do, Felix Bautista. I don't know how people are diving into that even before the shoulder, or the fact that they'll be slow rolling him. But yeah, Yamamoto's around him. Pete Alonso, who I'm huge on. I would definitely rather have Pete Alonso, unless you completely neglected stolen bases. Rafael Iglesias and then Helsley. So there's a bunch of closers. Cole Reagan, Cease is still some on the board, could be, but it looks like it's between Wyatt Langford or James Wood. Who are you leaning towards?
I would take James Wood. I think if you went pitching early and you needed some hitting, and outfield is one that gets shallow very quickly, I feel like. Yeah. So, I mean, from a hitting perspective, I would definitely take Alonso. I would probably take Teoscar because of the counting stats. But I think Wood is one of the upside guys that we're talking about in that range that doesn't necessarily have the price tag of the 2nd or 3rd rounders like the Jackson Merrills and Jackson Chourios we just talked about.
Okay. And that's James Wood. Moving on to Lawrence Butler, Oakland Athletic. Oops. Not Oakland. Not Oakland. The Sacramento. Man, let me delete Oakland and just put AT.
How many times are we going to say
man
Oakland Athletics by accident this year?
And And who I feel bad for is the actual Athletic fans, who every time they hear that, I'm sure their stomach drops, yeah. So anyway, the Sacramento Athletics outfielder with an ADP of 70, bad X projection for 585 plate appearances with a 244 average, 25 homers, 75 runs, 71 RBI, 14 stolen bases. The Vegas has him for an over-under on home runs at 22.5. That's on Caesar. Are you over or under on his home runs at 22.5 for Lawrence Butler?
Once again, this feels dirty to say, but I'm taking the over. So the over is minus 120. The under is even money. So there are worse odds for the over, but that means more favorable. But, Marty, me, you, and Vinny have talked about, they're going to a AAA ballpark, which I feel like a lot of the sports books haven't factored in. That's something where us being fantasy baseball fans, I think, have a slight edge on some of the books because they are putting out so many player props. But last year, 22 home runs in 125 games. He's 23 years old. All of the projections have him playing a minimum of 136 games. Most fluctuate in the 145, 149 range. And every projection besides Zips, which has him at the 136 games, has him hitting at least 23 home runs, most of it fluctuating in the 25 to 29 range. Obviously, the K percentage, 24%, doesn't walk a lot at 7.8, but that's kind of what you're looking for someone's over home runs, that they don't walk a lot, that they are going to swing a lot. Bat speed, 83rd percentile, and he got really hot at the end of the season last year.
Yeah, and the biggest thing, and I did a bunch of in-depth look at Lawrence Butler because I'm just generally a fan, of the way he plays and everything. Anything, fastballs high. Any fastball, doesn't matter where. If it's inside or outside, he absolutely crushes all fastballs up in the zone. Now, his kryptonite, sinkers, low in the zone, and changeups. Because, and you were just talking about this, he is so focused on just hitting the ball as hard as he possibly can. He really struggles with off-speed pitching. So I'll try to get some kind of share of him somewhere, probably more so in an auction. I feel like I'll be able to get him more so than a snake draft. But something to really pay attention to this year is how does he adjust and how do pitchers adjust to him with the changeup, with the sinker, because anything off speed, anything breaking, he just really struggles. So we'll see that. And I think that will lead to a lower batting average, which is the projections. They have him at 244 for a reason. But looking at his home runs, I'll take the over on the home runs. The park plays into it. What's his barrel rate? 11%. I mean, he absolutely crushes the ball with the 261 XBA. So he makes up for when he does make contact. I mean, he really does hit it hard. But yeah, I'm good with the home runs. I think I'd rather have him than James Wood.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, baking in the ADP, right? So you can wait a little bit. You can, where James Wood is 50, ADP of 51, Butler's ADP of 70. So you can wait that extra round and a half. And I think you'll get some roughly kind of the same hitter, maybe a little less stolen bases and a little more and a little less average, but more home runs. So I guess it depends on the build. But yeah, I would take the over on home runs. And then looking at stolen bases for Lawrence Butler, 19.5 on MGM. I'm going lower on I'm under on the stolen bases. What about you?
I'm under on the stolen bases. I'm with you over on the home runs. Sprint speed for him was in the 58th percentile. I will say one thing about Lawrence Butler. He had 10 home runs in a 12-game stretch from middle August to beginning of September. The last, I think, 20-ish games of the season, he had 1 home run. So very streaky. And that stretch where he had 10 home runs in 12 games, he had a stretch of 5 homers in 3 games, including a 3-homer game. So just kind of keep that in mind, that he's one of those guys that we saw last year in his limited plate appearances be a little bit streaky. So if you draft him, be prepared to be frustrated at certain points.
And I think maybe that last few weeks of him really struggling are pitchers, doing their job, looking at the scouting report, staying out of middle, upper middle with the fastball. Because like I said, he absolutely crushes fastballs. But moving on to Junior Caminero of the Tampa Bay Rays, third baseman with an ADP of 76. Caminero's bad X projection is 558 plate appearances, 263 average, 23 homers, 65 runs, 75 RBI with 5 stolen bases. Vegas slots him in with a over-under of 23.5 for home runs. Same thing with FanDuel, 23.5. So that's exactly where they're at. Bad X has 23. Where are you? I mean, this kind of looks like a push.
This is a push. And with someone that, a lot of times we're talking about young guys, but at least had, 80, 90 games of MLB playing time last year. Junior Caminero had 43 games in the majors last year. So that's a really small sample size. Granted, he had 6 home runs in that span. I mean, he's slated for an everyday role. I'm going to say, if I had to pick one, I would pick the over. But this is one that I'm staying away from. The under is minus 125. The over is even money. So it's favored that he goes under. But, that video, Marty, of him crushing a ball in, what was it? International League play or
yes, yeah. The walk-off home run. Yeah. Yep.
I think that's
the Dominican League.
Yeah, in the Dominican League.
Yeah.
I think that just shows his raw power. So
okay.
I think 23.5 for someone of the and granted the prospect pedigree has been there for years. He's 6'1", 220 at 21 years old.
Yeah, I mean, he's someone that I spent a lot of money on Fab. I picked him up where I could in any of my leagues last year. Barrel rate 11.8%. Bat speed's really up there. Strikeout percentage is around average, and he doesn't walk too much. So he's a slugger. 238 XBA. The silver lining here, and why I do believe he can get to that over, the park. They're moving out of Tampa Bay. It's hard. And players have said this for so long. It's hard to see. It's hard to pick up the ball. Strikeouts are high there. And he's moving into it's basically Yankee Stadium, but in Florida. That ball is going to absolutely fly out of there. And then the second half of the year, and this is just an overall thing I'm looking at. I'm trying to get as many Tampa Bay Rays hitters on my teams, and I'm fading the pitching because it's going to be hard in Florida, outside in basically Yankee Stadium. It's too risky for me. And then second half of the year, it's going to be mostly on the road, which I don't like for pitching as well. I just feel like pitchers are so set in their ways and everything like that. So just overall, I'm targeting more Tampa Bay Rays hitters than I am pitchers, and I would take the over on Caminero's home runs.
Marty, I think you bring up a good point because it was very well publicized that Oakland was playing their last game in the Coliseum last year. There has been a lot of stuff that's happened recently, baseball or not, that has kind of made you forget of the natural disasters that hit Tampa earlier. That might not be top of mind of someone when drafting until they really start to think about it. They see notes or they see someone else talk about it. I haven't seen a lot of people bring up that the Rays are going to be playing in a different ballpark. So I think you bring up a really good point.
It's something that's at the forefront of my mind, especially this early in a draft. If you're looking for pitching or whatever it is, because there's just so many question marks. But I think hitting will be able to do well there. All right, Mark Vientos, New York Mets third baseman with an ADP of 96. Bad X projects him for 614 plate appearances with a 232 average, 27 bombs, 69 runs, 83 RBI, and do not expect any stolen bases from him. Bad X said 0 stolen bases, which I think is funny. Usually they put in at least 1. But Vegas has him for an over-under of 26.5. That's Caesars, and 28.5 on FanDuel. I think FanDuel did a little bit of their research with the park, not so much Caesars. Where are you leaning towards? Do you think he really taps into that power in a full season, or do you think he goes under?
I love him as a sleeper this year. I feel like he got a little bit of disrespect last year, and I understand he strikes out close to 30% of the time, but that lineup got better. Anytime you add Juan Soto, I mean, look what it did to Aaron Judge last year. And obviously Aaron Judge has had great seasons before, but I think you're going to see a little bit of a hit not having that Soto protection in there. It helped with the Nationals with Rendon. It helped when he was on the Padres with Machado. And I think it's going to help with Vientos. They brought back Pete Alonso, Francisco Lindor. He had 27 homers in 111 games last year. He's 25 years old. He's locked into a third base and probably some DH for the entire season. I'm going over. And I think, and I want to check the odds on him. I would be interested to see what value you could get for him to lead the league in home runs. A barrel percentage of 92%, average exit velocity in the 82nd percentile, but he's 6'4", 185.
The only thing I don't love is they have him. This is roster resource, as it's been well documented. Great resource, but not necessarily, they don't know everything. It's just, a very educated guess. Brandon Nimmo's the fourth batter. I don't, if
Brandon Nimmo isn't even 100% healthy.
Yeah, exactly. So I could easily see him slotting into the fourth slot. So, I mean, Lindor, Soto, Alonso, then Vientos. I mean, that might be the best top four in baseball. It's close for sure. What 26.5? I would take the 26.5 over on Caesars. I mean, I could see him easily getting 30 or more home runs. I don't have him anywhere. Go ahead.
I was going to say the market was as high as 30.5. This is one of the things I love about betting is it's a market of corrections. It's kind of like the stock market.
Yeah, and looking at his ADP right now, right at the beginning of the 7th round in a 15-team league, he's on an island as well as far as third baseman. Caminero is exactly 30 picks above him in the beginning of the 6th round. Or you could wait around and get Royce Lewis, which I have absolutely no want to do so. I understand his upside, but there's just no reason to think that he'll be healthy. Maybe if you're in a fab league, you might want to take that chance. Obviously, a 10-team league, why not? But if I'm in the 7th, if I'm near 6th, 7th round and I don't have a third baseman, I'm going to get Vientos for sure.
Yeah, I think he's, it's tough to say sleepers because I feel like there's so much that's documented out on social media. Like we know that Nick Pollock and Eno are very high on Hunter Brown. So that makes his ADP go up. You see a clip of Junior Caminero hitting a home run, his ADP goes up. We see Ronald Acuna in batting practice. His ADP is starting to creep up. I feel like Vientos is one of those few quote-unquote sleepers that isn't getting talked about, but could provide you a better return than where you drafted him at.
Absolutely. Riley Greene, one of my Detroit Tigers, Detroit outfielder, ADP of 108, bad X projection for 603 plate appearances with a 260 average, 20 home runs, 77 runs, 72 RBI with only 6 stolen bases. And we'll get into why I think that is. Vegas over-under of 21.5 home runs on FanDuel, 23.5 on Caesars. Where are we at with Riley Greene?
Marty, any Detroit Tigers, you got to lead off.
Okay. Riley Greene has now moved to left field, and that may not seem directly fantasy relevant, but it is to me because he plays a reckless center field. The time he hurt his shoulder is because he, tried to take away a ball, tried to rob a home run, separated his shoulder, out for a long time. He dives a lot. He's just reckless in general. So Parker Meadows will be at center field, leaving him in left field. So I think that's going to preserve him as far as longevity. 20 home runs. I can see him getting over 21.5. I would take the over on the home runs. And with the stolen bases, they don't want him to run simply because of the fact that he gets hurt often. I'm not going to say he's injury prone. He's young, and the injuries that he's got they're not typically soft tissue injuries, so they're kind of not fluke injuries, but they could happen to anybody.
They're preventable.
Exactly. I think with the way that they're going to try to have him go, I think he'll be able to be a little bit healthier. So I could see the home runs, but I would say 20. It might be 22 or 23. It's not going to be much higher than that. What about you?
I would take the over 21.5 on FanDuel. And this is where it's interesting because, when you have a 1 or 2 home run difference, that can be if you win or lose a wager. Riley Greene last year hit, I think it was 24 home runs, right?
He hit 24 home runs. Yep. In 584 plate appearances.
Yeah. So it played 137 games. So I think, and Marty, this is why I wanted you to lead off. The fact that he is moving to left field and the Tigers are having an approach of him just trying to stay healthier and not as risk adverse with how he potentially plays. I mean, all projection systems having have him hitting 20 plus home runs. Most have him in the 22 to 23 range, but I think if he misses, it would be by 1 or 2. I don't think there is that possibility that he misses severely, like we were talking about with some other potential players here. So I'm going to go on the over. 23 years old, upside. Hopefully he's healthy. I mean, if he plays 145 games, I don't see why he wouldn't hit it.
Barrel percentage 13.4. I mean, 90th percentile. I mean, he X slug 89th percentile, X Volpe 88th percentile, and he walks at a great clip. You know, he's walking 11% of the time. Strikeouts are a little bit higher than I expected, especially with a 75% contact rate. So you kind of would expect that to go down. Maybe that's because of the fact that he's missed time on and off. You know, he still hasn't been able to fully adjust to major league pitching because he's only 24 years old. Max exit velocity in the top 8 percentile. And max exit velocity isn't on its own. I don't think it really means too much, but what it does show for me is like it's a flash. It's a preview of his upper power. Like how hard can this man hit the ball? And he can absolutely crush it. So I think him, if he stays healthy, which we could say that about every player, but yeah, if he stays healthy, I think he's going to get north of 22, 23 home runs, especially after last year, 24 home runs and just 584 plate appearances. I think it's more than possible for Riley Greene.
If anything, take Marty's word for it. He is a diehard Tigers fan.
For better or worse, absolutely. And I just want to see, before we move on really quickly, and as such a devoted Tigers fan, I probably should know where he's slotted in. But yeah, they have him as third. So Parker Meadows, Gleyber Torres, Riley Greene. So what that says to me is they want him to tap into his power as much as possible. He's, they don't. When he first came up, he was either leading off or in the 2 hole, which means, you kind of change your approach, right? You try to get on at base as much as possible when you're the third slot's for the best hitter on the team. So I think the over on the home runs is pretty safe again, if he stays healthy. All right, Jake Burger, Texas first base and third base eligibility, which I think is going to be really important with first base being a little bit, I don't know, it drops off quickly in your drafts, and you'll see that for those drafting here over the next few weeks. His ADP is 116. The Bad X projects Burger for 583 plate appearances, 241 average, 29 homers, 73 runs, 81 RBI, 2 stolen bases. Looking at Vegas, the over-under on his home runs is 28.5 on FanDuel, and you've seen it as high as 33.5.
33.5 is how it opened out. A lot of books come out with projections, and then, once there's market activity, we'll move it one way or another. I think a lot of people bet the under at 33.5. I wouldn't feel confident doing that. I actually like that it's been pushed down. It's minus 120 on the over, minus 106 on the under now. This is one of the easier overs for me to take. He had 29 home runs last year, 34 home runs with 2 teams in 2023. Marty, you could say that he's played for the 2 worst organizations in MLB, playing with the White Sox and the Marlins, right?
I mean, absolutely. And the fact that he's able to get out of Florida, out of the Marlins park and into Texas, I think it's going to be pretty big for him. I mean, barrel rate 12.3%. So he hits the ball at an extremely good rate. It's going to be health. Jake Burger has been unable to stay healthy for any part of his career. Even if he has a couple good months, he typically, I think he strained his oblique last year, which we see a lot. The more and more that teams focus on their hitters swinging as hard as they possibly can to make that upper level contact, we have seen oblique injuries go up. So if anything's going to stop him again, I think it's going to be an injury. I'm going to take the under because I haven't taken an under yet. Now, with that said, I have Jake Burger as my first baseman on 2 teams already. I think I've drafted 6 or 7 teams so far. So I'm all in on Jake Burger just in general, but just for the law of averages, I'm going to take an under here at the 28.5. Probably get 20. He'll get 25 to 27 home runs. He can get 30. I think that's absolutely possible if he stays healthy. He just hasn't been able to do that.
Well, so he's played 141 and he hit 34 homers, and 137 games and he hit 29. So it's not like, he's been a Cal Ripken, or who's the modern day Cal Ripken? Who could we say is the Mikal Bridges of baseball?
Mikal Bridges, nice. Man, that's a good question. I don't know if I
I
have anybody off the top of my
I
head.
think I was trying to remember last year who they
Soto?
said. I think they said
Soto?
Marcus Simeon or Soto.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
M-
Yeah, I could see
M-
Simeon.
Marcus Simeon, I think, is one of the more durable guys. So it's not like he's the Marcus Simeon of baseball, although they're playing on the same team, so maybe some good juju rubs off on him. But let's say he plays 140 games. That would put him in line with the over. And the K percentage has dropped off the last 3 years, 30.6 to 27.6 to 25.9 percentage. Obviously, that's still high, but he's making more contact. And I think that's what happened. That's what's happening when he's seeing more pitches.
Off the top of your head, for right-handed batters, where does Globe Life Field rank? So that's where the Texas Rangers play. They change their name almost every year. But looking at it, where do you think for right-handed power hitters, this is specifically looking at home runs, where do you think Globe Life Field ranks?
I'm going to embarrass myself because I have no idea, and I'm going to say 19th.
Number 4.
Wow.
It's the 4th best hitting park for home runs for right-handed hitters. So I might have to go with
You
the
locked in the
over.
under. Marty put his life savings on the under.
I mean, that's absolutely incredible. To put that in perspective, Marlins 22nd with the 92, so well below average park factor for right-handed power hitting. And Globe Life is one of the best places. The only place by Reds, Dodgers, Yankees, Rangers. So it's right there. It's one of the best parks in baseball for them.
Oh, wow.
Okay, who we got now? Triston Casas. There's a lot of question marks on Triston Casas right now, for better or worse. I don't know, but yeah, Boston first baseman for now. ADP is 122. Bad X projects him for 586 plate appearances, a 231 average, 23 homers, 69 runs, 77 RBI. In Vegas, a lot more optimistic. They have him for 25.5 for the over-under on FanDuel for home runs. Where are you leaning for Triston Casas?
I would take the under on home runs. I don't think he's going to be the source of power that you think you're going to get at first base. I understand that he's had a little bit of an injury-plagued career so far. I think he had an oblique or like a rib cage fracture last year that limited him to 63 games, 13 home runs. But a real student of the game. Like, you remember when they had that Sunday Night Baseball performance on, and he's like practicing his swing and like imagining running to first base when somebody made contact. So I love him as a baseball player, but I think he's going to be someone that doesn't sell out for power because he's already had that core injury. I would love if there was an RBI line for him out there, but I don't see him playing as many games, especially because the Red Sox just have so many options. And one of the projections, Zips, has him playing 107 games. The most have him playing 146, which is Steamer. So they're either factoring in he's going to lose some playing time or that he's not going to be healthy the entire season.
And looking at the park factor for Fenway for left-handed power hitting for home runs specifically, it's just below average at 98. So to put that in perspective, Citi Field's right there for New York Mets, and then the guaranteed rate field for the White Sox. So it's pretty much neutral as far as park factors for him. It's going to come down to what Boston's going to do over the next month. I think he's going to stay. I think he's going to be their first baseman of the future. But again, the oblique issue, like you brought up, I want to say, I think it was quoted, the doctor said it's as if he got into a car accident. That's how much damage he did with his swing, because he tries to hit the ball as absolutely as hard as he can. And when he does make contact, I mean, he obviously hits bombs. His barrel rate, 13.3%. So, I mean, it's about as high as it could possibly be. Looking at his spray chart, he has deep alley power. He can pull it left field, right field. It doesn't matter. So he hits the ball all over the place. Strikes out 31.7% of the time. So that's going to be the big thing here. Can a 25-year-old Triston Casas adjust more and not completely sell out for power? We will see. 219 expected batting average. I'm going to take the under on him, mostly because of injury history. And that's it. I'm not going to have Triston Casas anywhere. I think with his ADP, I think it's fair. I think that so far, let's see, he's going middle of the 8th round. Who would you rather have, Jake Burger or Triston Casas? They're right next to each other.
I would take Jake Burger. He's in a better lineup, and I'm not as worried about playing time. Both have some injury risk with it.
What about Spencer Steer?
What position eligibility is he this year?
He'll be first base and outfield. He does have an injury though. His shoulder, which literally hurt him last year. He's still experiencing soreness in that. So I expect that actually his ADP. This is ADP over the last week on NFBC 15-team league, specifically draft champions. I would take Triston Casas definitely over Spencer Steer.
Oh, I would too. This is news to me for Spencer Steer because his lines are out there. So Marty, you might have just caused a little bit of an action for me.
It dropped yesterday. This news.
Oh wow.
Yep.
I don't know. I would take Berger. I do like Casas a lot. Marty, I also want to say that's a poll about Triston Casas saying that it was like a car accident to his body. I'm pulling up the article, and he does say it was like a car accident within my body.
Yeah. It's I mean, you hear something like that, it sticks with you. That's absolutely devastating. Now here's where it gets. This is the 8th round of a 15-team league. This is like first baseman city. Jake Berger's there, Triston Casas, Spencer Steer, Vinny Pasquantino, and Cody Bellinger. So I think this is where it gets even more difficult. Would you rather have Vinny Pasquantino or Triston Casas?
Casas.
Wow. Okay. What about Cody Bellinger?
Is Bellinger still outfield eligible?
I think he is.
I would take Bellinger then.
Let's see here. He is,
and I like Vinny Pasquantino. He's a great Twitter follow, but I don't see him getting that shoulder, the power back that he had with shoulder injury.
Yeah, I see. He's currently only first base eligible. That is Cody Bellinger, but we already know that he's going to be playing. He'll gain that within the first week or so. The Yankees have already said he's going to be. I think he's going to be center field, which hopefully he doesn't get hurt there. But okay, so moving on to
Marty, I want to do one more point about Casas because I'm so fascinated about this car crash.
Okay,
I'm usually the one that has like obscure polls. He said it pretty much chalked up to being so big, rotating so fast, so many times that I pretty much created a car crash within my body. The doctor said it was something similar to a pitcher needing Tommy John, an inevitable thing that was going to happen sooner rather or later. So if he doesn't change his swing, this is going to happen again.
That's exactly how I read into it too. So I think I think who's made some moves. The Boston, his own team is kind of, picking up people. And
weren't there rumors that he could be on the trade block, or was I just imagining?
No, absolutely. Especially when it broke that Rafael Devers, they may ask him to move to first base, which immediately his agent says, he's a third baseman. He's not moving to first, but he's already gotten paid. So that's not the problem there. So I could easily see Bregman going to third. Bregman will not, if you waste Alex Bregman at second base, that would be a travesty. The only reason why because he's declining as far as his hitting skills, but he's still a great fielder. I could see him going to third, Rafael Devers moving to a first base. Then what are you going to do with Yoshida? That's a question there. As far as the DH role, maybe Triston slots in at DH, but with the moves that are going around and the fact that oblique injuries are extremely high, and you just said it yourself. I mean, he could easily, that could happen to him this year. So I don't know. Like I'm staying away from him, Triston Casas for this year. Dylan Cruz, Washington Nationals outfielder, an ADP of 132. Bad X projects him for 574 plate appearances with a 245 average. 15 homers, 69 runs, 60 RBI, 23 stolen bases. Vegas has him at a 14.5 on FanDuel for home runs. So are we taking the over or the under for Dylan Cruz at a 14.5 home runs?
You know what? It's going to be tough for me to have someone that has this little experience. And I know I just talked about it with Caminero, but this kind of reminds me of the Jackson Holiday hype going into last season. Jackson Holiday's home run line was, I think, 11.5. Dylan Cruz had 16 in 131 games between MILB and MLB last year. I just don't see him having a 15 home run season his first year in. I think he probably hits closer to the top of the lineup. I think I'd feel more confident on his stolen bases. I mean, he had 12 steals in 132 plate appearances. So I think that's going to be his approach. I just don't see him being somebody that's selling out for power. Not saying that 15 is, but I just don't see him having that upside immediately. What about you?
And looking at his StatCast data, 6.4 barrel percentage, so well under average. And then hopping down, his max exit velocity is 109, so that kind of puts him just outside the top 100. So the actual power, raw power, is not there. Completely agree with his with the stolen bases. I mean, he has great instincts, great sprint speed. I think he'll get well over 25 stolen bases. I think maybe with how much Washington runs, 30, 35, 40. I mean, I don't know. It could be, I don't know. He's going to be second in that lineup. It's an improved lineup, but still not great. They're going to have to generate offense in different ways. So I think he'll be mostly focused on getting on base. XBA of 253, walk percentage right at average, 8.3. I would take the under on the home runs. And I know there's no line for a stolen bases, but whatever it is, I would go above it.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and he's been walking at a decent clip at every level. Besides his 51 games at AA last year, he's walked at least an 8% clip every season, no matter what level he's been at.
And looking at Nationals Park, it's right. It's a 101 StatCast factor. So it's basically just right at average. So there's
it's an average really MLB park if you go to it.
Yeah.
It's just average in everything. It's on the relatively new side, but there's nothing that's going to wow you there. It's just an average place to play with average players, average pitchers.
Well, there you go. You heard it first. I've never been there. One day I would like to, but it's not exactly a glaring endorsement for it. But so Dylan Cruz, we both take the under on home runs at 14.5. Ezequiel Tovar, who I was able to get everywhere last year at such a discount, is now skyrocketed up. The shortstop for the Colorado Rockies, an ADP of 137. Bad X projects him for 644 plate appearances, 263 average, 22 home runs, 77 runs, 79 RBI, and 12 stolen bases. Hopping down to Vegas, Caesars book has him for over under of 21.5. So pretty much right on line with Bad X. How are we leaning with Ezequiel Tovar?
I mean, this is such a push because if you look at his metrics on there, barrel percentage 60th percent, average exit velocity 44th percentile, hard hit percentage 46th percentile, bat speed 39th percentile. The line is up there because he plays for Colorado. So he had 26 homers in 157 games last year. He played 153 games the year before and had 15 home runs. So I think this is going to depend on how durable he is. I think if he plays 130, 140 games, he's not going to hit this. I would take the over because he does play in Colorado for half of his games. And it gives you something a little bit more to root for. Marty, I want to hear your thoughts before I pull up his splits.
I'm taking the under on his home runs for a few different reasons. He strikes out 29% of the time. His contact rate is well below average, XBA of 233. And you're exactly right. He's an accumulator. Unless he stays completely healthy. Last year, 157 games. So that's, what is that? Missing 5 games, right? It's 100. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 5 games missed the entire season. And he got 26 home runs. So any type of injury, he's not going to be able to hit that. And he reminds me of Thairo Estrada from 2 years ago, where he had 20 home runs, he had close to 20 stolen bases. But when you looked at his actual his profile, it didn't scream that at all. If anything, and it said he was actually a really bad hitter and that he would heavily regress. And what happened the next year? He got sent down to AAA for Thairo Estrada. So I don't think he's going to be sent down. Tovar, he has a really good glove. He's still young. He's still in Coors. I think he's relatively safe. I wouldn't have him as my shortstop, he's a back end shortstop now in a 15-team league. I prefer where I got him last year as a middle infielder. I think that's when you can really take advantage of his skill set. But I would go. I'm taking the under on Tovar home runs of 21.5.
I'll say this though. This makes me feel a little bit more confident in the over and taking everything that you said into factor. He's an accumulator. There could be possible regression. I like the Thairo Estrada comparison. Guess out of the 26 home runs, how many were hit at home?
My guess is not 26. because you brought it up, I'm going to say 13. He split them.
You're good. It is 13.
No way. There we go.
It's a 50-50 split. 13 home runs at
That's
home,
good.
13 home runs on the road. So I don't feel as like, I think when we dive into Michael Toglia, that's going to be someone that huge discrepancy home and road home run splits. But he had 26 last year, so he cleared it by a decent margin. So even if he does play 140, 145 games, he could hit 23.
And I'm looking at his expected home runs by park. And here's, I think, the reason why you can, book or rely on him having around 20 home runs or more. He pulls everything. So he has that profile where that carries over in any field that you go to. He doesn't spray it all over the place. He has a specific swing to pull his home runs, as you'll look at his as a spray chart. But when we go down to expected home runs by ballpark, let's see, man. So he had 26 in overall. If he was in Baltimore, he would have had 14. And take this with a grain of salt. This is if he played every single game, at Mount Baltimore. He would only have 14. Most of the other ones, 25.
Said Mount Baltimore.
Yeah. I would say so Houston, he would have 28. That just like Bregman, or Isaac Paredes, they really they sell out to pull the ball. That's why his strikeout rate's a little bit higher as well. So I could see him. What is it again? What's he at?
21 and a half.
He could easily hit 22. He could hit 22 or 23.
You put your other half of life savings on the under already.
I'm gonna keep it on under only because he's an accumulator, and yeah, I'm gonna have to ride out with that. You got anything else on Ezequiel Tovar?
No, I think accumulators aren't bad to take from a fantasy perspective.
Shows health. That's all we've done is talk about, well, if he was healthy, that's something we don't have to say with him. He plays almost every single game. So, and he plays the hardest position outside of catcher, obviously. But yeah, so moving on to Anthony Volpe. So if Tovar is going 137, Anthony Volpe for the New York Yankees shortstop, his ADP is 141. So it's pretty much a toss-up if you're looking for a shortstop or a middle infielder at that point in the draft. BADX projects him for 614 plate appearances, 239 average, 13 home runs, 74 runs, 55 RBI with 25 stolen bases. Where are we leaning with Volpe? Because Vegas has him at 14.5 on FanDuel. Do you think he gets over? Do you think he gets 15 home runs or more?
And this is tough because 2023, he had 21 home runs and he played 159 games. And last year he played 160 games and he had 12 home runs. I'm going to take the under. Part of it, and I brought it up a couple times, I look at how someone is built. And obviously there's the Jose Altuves that are 5'6" and can hit for power. But he's 5'9", 180. And, 12 home runs last year and 160 games. I understand the Yankees lineup is going to be better, but I don't see him playing or missing only 2 games from there. He's someone, rookie year, he was a Gold Glover. I think they're not going to ask him to sell out for power. They have enough people that are going to be swinging for the fences in that lineup already. I'm more intrigued at the stolen bases. So he has 24 and 28, and it's 25 and a half. So I feel that if you are going to do something for a player prop, 83rd percentile in sprint speed. But when you look at his batting stats on Baseball Savant, we call it a Mr. Freeze, right? Where it's just all blue.
Yep. Looking at it here, okay, with Anthony Volpe, when you look at his StatCast data, it's as if they're doing the wave when you look at it from 23 to 24. And what I mean by that is barrel percentage was very high in 2023. His barrel percentage was very high. He sold out for power, but what happened with that? K rate, 27.8. So he went back into the lab, changed his swing. So he took his launch angle from 14.2 to 8.4. With that, K rate went down 22.6. He's more of a contact hitter right now. That's what the Yankees want him to be. They want him to strike out less. They want him to get his bat on the ball, get on the base pass, and get as many stolen bases as possible. So I completely agree with the over on the stolen bases of 25.5. And the only thing that he could tap into that power a little bit more. First off, he's young. I mean, he's only 23 years old. So it's possible he just finds another level, as many players do. And in Yankee Stadium, the park factor of right-handed power hitters for home runs, 119. It's the third best. So he's a great place to do it. But anytime Volpe in his career has focused on power, it has destroyed him everywhere else with batting average and strikeout rate. So it's kind of a give and go. I'll go 14.5. You know what? I'm going to go over on the home runs and on the stolen bases. And I think he might get like 15 home runs. I think he'll barely get to that.
And over is an over.
And over is an over. Exactly. Straight up though, Tovar or Volpe, who do you want?
Volpe.
I have Volpe. I don't have Tovar anywhere. So you know what? I agree with that. But mostly because it's hard to find stolen bases, especially if you neglected them in the first 3, 4, 5 rounds. And once you get to like the 6th, 7th, 8th, it kind of becomes a wasteland. So a great stolen base upside for Anthony Volpe. Okay, moving on to another Detroit Tiger, Kerry Carpenter, Detroit outfielder with an ADP of 203, or I call him Kerry Bonds. Because he honestly is one of the best right-handed power hitters when he's healthy, which is another big asterisk for him. And we'll get into that. But BAT projection for 478 plate appearances, 250 average, 20 homers, 59 runs, 63 RBIs with 4 stolen bases. The homers are at 20.5 on FanDuel. Are we going over or under for Kerry Carpenter home runs?
Marty, remember the law of this show is anytime we're talking about a Tiger, you have to start.
That's true. All right, let me summon myself for this. Here's the bad part about Kerry Carpenter. Last year, he fractured his spine.
Yep.
So you have a power hitter who swings as hard as he possibly can, who has reoccurring back problems. He, in the playoffs, blew out his hamstring. So he has soft tissue injuries. He has back injuries. And although AJ Hinch just said this yesterday or the day before, he will get more opportunities versus left-handed pitching. He's going to have to earn them. So he's going to have to show that he can't hit lefties. Because as of right now, he is a strictly platoon bat. He's a righty who, or he's a lefty that strictly only hits against righties. And the Detroit Tigers organization has not wanted him to go against lefties because he's been so poor. Now, is he bad against lefties because he never plays against them, or is he bad against them because he'll never be able to hit them? We don't know. Hopefully, we'll find out this year. So the bad is he platoons. He's a strict platoon, even though it is strong side. He has had soft tissue injuries and he has reoccurring back injuries. Plus, he's in Comerica Park. I don't have any problem with taking the under on that. He has the power. There's absolutely no doubt about it. I honestly do think he's one of the best right-handed hitters when he's healthy. But I don't see that as a foregone conclusion. If I had to put $100 on it, I'm taking the under.
Yeah, I'm going to take the under with you on that. You brought up the back injury, a lumbar spine stress fracture. Remember at one point, they didn't think that he would return during the season. So the fact that he came back and even played and finished with 18 home runs and was able to play in the playoffs, I think was more than people anticipated when the initial injury happened. And I think he was a great streamer last year for periods of time. But I think everything connects to the back. When you have hamstring issues, it could be because of a back issue. Think about people that have had back issues and how many times we can just forget about it. Anthony Rizzo, Christian Yelich. Yep. That's going to affect your power. And Kerry Carpenter, 27 isn't old, but it's not young. A lot of the guys that we've talked about on here, you're 22, 23 years old. You have a better chance of playing every day. Kerry Carpenter, the most games he's played in a season is 118. So the projections have him playing between 115 and 120 games. That's lofty to hit 21 home runs. Now, it can be done, but I'm taking the under on this.
All right. And moving on to Michael Toglia, Colorado first baseman, ADP of 213. BAT projects him for 531 plate appearances, a 225 average, 21 homers, 62 RBI, 62 runs, 65 RBI, 7 stolen bases. Vegas has a over-under of 22.5 on his home runs, and that's from FanDuel. You've seen it as high as 24.5. So what are you thinking for Toglia?
It's interesting. I mean, this is a guy that played 76 games in 2022 and 2023, had 6 homers. Then he plays 116 and has 25 home runs. And I can see why they dropped it from 24.5 to 22.5, because obviously the cores effect, but it's a small sample size last year compared to a couple of years ago. And the thing about Toglia, 32.1% K percentage last year and an 11.8 walk percentage. So that's
the true 3 outcomes kind of guy.
It's a true 3 outcomes kind of guy. And there's little wiggle room for being able to hit for power. And when you look at last year, the 25 home runs, 8 came at home, 17 came on the road. That makes me a little bit more inclined to bet the over. The fact that he had 24 and 116 games, I would have bet the under at 24.5, but I'm betting the over at 22.5.
And when you look at it, so he had 25 home runs last year. When you look at expected home runs by park, there's only a few where that is backed up. I mean, the White Sox, Houston Astros, Philly, Reds, all the rest are under. Colorado's 25. But all the rest are under that. So ballpark factor is his, he even though he only hit less than half, or about, would you say how many did he hit on the road? How many home runs?
He hit 17 on the road, 8 at home.
Okay. So I don't know. I'm taking the under because of the fact that he strikes out so much. It's just, he's not a good hitter. I mean, when he does hit, he hits the crap out of ball. 17.3 barrel percentage in the 98th percentile. So he swings extremely hard, but what would be talked about? People who swing extremely hard, more prone to injury. So for me, I would take I'm taking the under on his home runs. Okay, Jordan Walker, St. Louis Cardinals outfielder, ADP of 280. Bad X projects him for 516 plate appearances with a 248 average, 15 homers, 59 runs, 59 RBI, and 7 stolen bases. Vegas has an over-under on his homers at 16.5. So a little bit more optimistic than the Bad X. But where are you at with Jordan Walker?
I would take the over. I mean, the thing is he going to get playing time this year? And the Cardinals are not as good as well-run organization as I thought a couple of years ago. But they did get rid of Paul Goldschmidt. They're trying to get rid of Nolan Arenado, which means there should be more at-bats for Jordan Walker, who in 117 games in 2023, which is the most he's had from MLB perspective, had 16 home runs from there. He's only 23 years old. Remember, a couple of years ago, he was touted as one of the best prospects in baseball. Going into his rookie season, he was projected to win Rookie of the Year. Not projected, but he had the best odds. So I think recency bias is what's killed it a little bit. I'm more worried about the playing time and the organization that he's playing for. But I think from a pure talent perspective alone, he could easily hit 17 home runs.
So in 2023, when he did have the 16 home runs, he had a 276 average. And first thing I look at is what was his strikeout percentage? 22.4 in 2023. In 2024, it went all the way up to 28.1, which is in the, what is it? Well, I mean, it's extremely high. So I don't know what happened. I think it's a confidence issue with Jordan Walker, and that's something obviously we can't, it's not concrete. There's nothing tangible about that. As of right now, I'm going to take the under only because I don't know what Jordan Walker we're going to get. He's only 22 years old, so anything can happen. And again, I don't know what you touched on the organization. I don't know what the exact plan for him is.
But let's just say he got the playing time. So he had 5 home runs in 51 games last year. Let's just say he plays 150 games. That's putting him at 15 home runs with the 21.8 or 28.1 strikeout percentage last year. It was 19.4 in the minors. It was 22.4 in MLB the year before that. I do agree that it's a confidence thing, but that's where I'm hopeful that more at-bats helps with the confidence.
Yeah, possibility. I mean, Jordan Walker's going to be someone we're all going to be watching closely this year and see what his role is for 2026. And then last guy, thanks everyone for sticking with us a little bit longer here on the podcast, but it's the first one. We got things to talk about. It's been 6 months since we've done this. Last one is Connor Norby, Florida Marlins. Miami Marlins. That's how old I am. I just think of them as the Florida Marlins.
I think of Mike Stanton as Giancarlo Stanton.
That, as it should be. That's ridiculous that he did that. But anyway, the Miami Marlins, third baseman, ADP of 288. Bad X projects him for 557 plate appearances with a 245 average, 16 homers, 63 runs, 63 RBIs, and 11 stolen bases. So for Connor Norby, Vegas thinks they have the line at 18.5 for Caesars. Are we taking the over or the under on the 18.5?
I'm taking the under because the Marlins are a bad organization, and they're going to do something to stunt his development.
It seems to be their MO. And I have not given, I text you to this, I haven't given much thought to Connor Norby because I guess out of sight, out of mind. But you look at his strikeout percentage, 33%. I mean, he strikes out the most pretty much in Major League Baseball. Now, with that said, over those 194 plate appearances last year, had a 14.8 barrel percentage. So when he does make contact, it's there. Sprint speed is in the 94th percentile. So I think if he's, a bench player in a 15-team league, I think he'd be fine. But for this exercise specifically, I'm definitely taking the under on his home runs.
One of the things, and I know I was kind of tongue-in-cheek talking about the Marlins organization, when they demoted Max Meyer when he was doing well, and it was like, okay, we're going to limit his innings. We're not going to push him. They have no incentive to play Connor Norby and could manipulate his service time. So imagine he does go through a cold stretch where he's striking out 33% of the time and he's not hitting for the power that he was last year. Who's to say that they keep him on the major league roster? That's what worries me more is when I'm taking an over for a guy that plays for an unstable organization. Is he going, the projections have him playing 135, 136 games. So whether it's injury or demotion, they have him playing 75% of the games, 80%. It's not even, factoring in performance once the season starts. Raw power alone, he could hit it, but.
And then the park, Lone Depot Park, which is now it's named, doing him no favors. Last year, 95 park factor for right-handed hitting for home runs. The year before that, 87. The year before that, 91. The year before that, 78. So it's historically a bad park to hit home runs, as we know of. And a guy, we're not sure of his role. We're not sure of his skill. We just can go off the fact that it's Miami and that he strikes out a third of the time when he's up the bat. So I think we swept that, right? Both of us are taking the under on Connor Norby home runs.
It'll be interesting to see when we do this show or when we review this show at the end of the season, what our hit rate was.
I'm excited to do that. And thank you all for listening. We're going to get going here on this beautiful Sunday morning. Doc, what are we working on something? Do you want to plug your Twitter? What's going on with you?
Not as much content coming out as life has taken over. Still putting out some fantasy basketball content. And, just make sure that you follow the baseball pod. It's been, we took a couple months off. The crew got reshuffled a little bit, but we're all very motivated to come this season and give you great content. And Marty's going to do an awesome job hosting. And when we get Vinny in here, that's going to be the third one that compliments.
Yeah, Vinny's currently sick, so we're all, T's and P's for Vinny. But yes, I'm Marty Tallman. You can find me on Blue Sky at martytallman.bsky.social. And we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot.
Wow, not even plugging the other platform, just Blue Sky.
I'm done. That's a whole different podcast, but I'm done with X for sure.
Wow.
And on that note, take it easy. Bye-bye.